Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, How to Recognize and Prevent Elder Financial Abuse, sponsored by Minster Bank. We'll begin in a few minutes to give everyone some time to get logged in. Thank you for joining us. Okay, it looks like we have everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, How to Recognize and Prevent Elder Financial Abuse, sponsored by Minster Bank. My name is Steve Eiting. I'm a CPA and manager of Minster Bank's Private Wealth Management Department. Minster Bank's goal is to help people and businesses achieve financial success. And our Private Wealth Management Department is just one extension of our services. Besides private professional investment management, we also offer a full-service trust department where we serve as a fiduciary, and our duties can include bill payment and tax preparation. These services can be very helpful to protect seniors with financial assets. Before I introduce our speaker, I have a few bits of housekeeping. You may submit questions throughout the webinar in the questions panel on the side of your screen. We'll have a Q&A session at the end of our session. At the end of the live webinar, you'll also see a survey appear. Please complete the survey as your feedback is greatly appreciated. As a reminder, this webinar is being recorded and you will receive a copy of the recording via email after the webinar. It will come from Krista Beike at GoToWebinar. There are also handouts available for more information. Now on to our webinar. We're very excited to have Mrs. Sylvia Pla-Raith with us today. Sylvia has more than 30 years of experience working in the interest of older adults and elder justice. She's the lead staff member of the Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost Elder Abuse Commission and the director of the Elder Justice Unit. Her expertise includes elder abuse investigation, training, and policy development. Sylvia has a Master of Arts degree in Health and Human Services from John Carroll University and a Bachelor of Science in Psychology from the Ohio State University. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Sylvia Pla-Raith.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that introduction. And I want to thank you for having me here today. This is an important topic that Minster Bank has bringing to the attention of all of you. So I work for the Attorney General, Dave Yost, and here's a picture. And he's very proud to say that he has a lot of efforts in the office to protect older Ohioans. The Elder Justice Unit was created just for that. In Ohio, we have what I would consider a very fragmented system. So The one thing I do want you to remember today, and my contact information is available, is if you have any questions or concerns regarding elder abuse, elder financial fraud, elder scams, we're a great resource for you to follow up on. So I'm interested in knowing who's in the audience. If you want to launch a poll to see what your role is and how you're connected to the and why you might be interested in this particular topic. So if we can launch the first question of what is your role, that would be great. So take a moment to read the in your computers, and if you could take a minute to answer from the choices. If you consider yourself an older adult, are you a caregiver taking care of someone? Are you a family member? You're calling today because you're interested, or if these don't apply, it gives us a chance to know, and it helps me as your presenter to know who's in the audience. So please take a moment to answer those questions. So do you consider yourself an older adult, a caregiver taking care of an older person, a family member, or other? Okay, we're going to give that just a few more seconds. Okay, so we can see that a lot of you are calling in today, are calling in on behalf of your family member, and you have some concerns about someone you love. We also have a few caregivers and seniors. It looks like a few folks fall in another category. That'll be helpful for me. So I work in consumer protection section. Some of you might be familiar with that, but Ohio has laws that protect consumers to maintain a safe and strong business practice, which is my unit, the Elder Justice Unit, actually sits within consumer protection section. So I work very closely with my colleagues around issues that we're going to be talking today about scams. Now, scams, anyone can fall prey to a scam. It's just not an older person. But there's, today we're going to talk about why is it that it's specific to older adults. So my unit gets involved in just about when the caller is an older adult. A lot of times, in addition to the support of the consumer protection, they'll send a complaint to me to take a look at that, because sometimes it involves other issues that may require some assistance connecting with law enforcement or adult protective services. So we're kind of liaisons. I tell people we're navigators because we kind of have a good sense of what the landscape looks like and what the different services are, and we help connect services. For those of you who don't know, I heard this term when I first started this job about 5 years ago. Ohio is a home rule state, which means legislatively in crime, those things are actually overseen at the local level. So sometimes people think the Attorney General can undo what the local prosecutor or the local protective services or even judges are, and that's not true. So I'm here to be a liaison and help make those connections. Since our existence, we have helped over 2,000 folks, which have been supported by our office. So one of the things that I think is important and why it's so important that you're having this discussion today is that Ohio as a state, we're actually getting older. Most statistically, in the year 2040, we're going to have more Ohioans turning age 85 than we are 18. So we're getting older. So why this topic is so important is that it's not going away. If anything, it's going to become more prevalent. So we got to getting involved and knowing what to do about it is definitely a step in the right direction. That last bullet is important. When I first read this, I thought it was a typo, but it says that as much as people who are victimized are 300 times more likely to die at an earlier age than a non-victim. And that's alarming to me, because what I've learned is that once you become a victim of elder financial fraud or any abuse, the victim suffers consequences. They're more likely to not just die faster, but use nursing home services, emergency room services, mental health services. So there's some emotional and physical consequences to having to being experiencing as a victim. So why are older adults? Because I mentioned to you, this happens to anyone. Why particularly older adults? And one of the things is that, and this may change because I know each culture, each generation has a different culture, but older adults by far are more likely to be polite. For instance, so if a scammer calls the house, they're less likely to hang up because they were taught to be polite. So they believe that they have to have a conversation. They have to be nice. We also know older adults actually comprise 70% of our nation's wealth, sit with people 55 and older. So the scammers know this because they're after the money. They're also less likely to report fraud because they're shame and guilt, being afraid of losing their independence, or you might think that they're going crazy or they're losing their abilities or capacity issues. They may not tell you because somehow they believe if I tell you, somehow it's going to affect my ability for you to trust me or believe that I can remain independent. And the isolation by far is probably the biggest factor. And it's actually I'm concerned about that now with the COVID in amongst us, because while we're telling people to stay home and be safe, in some situations we're making it easier because the person is home and isolated from others. We're actually creating a climate where the bad guys, I call them bad guys, have easier access to the victims. So I'm very concerned when we go back to normal that we're actually going to find out that more people have been victimized during this COVID. So how do bad guys get you? I mean, sometimes we have a certain image in our head when you talk about a exploiter, abuser. We all have an image in our head of what they might look like. But how do they find us? Sometimes, which we're going to talk about today, but the use of the telephone. You have to be careful with social media. Some of you are saying, well, I'm not on social media, they can't get me, but your family is. And that's where sometimes it's important for us to pay attention to what we're posting on Facebook, because sometimes we post just enough information for scammers to pick on. And when they're calling an older adult, they actually have information about the family. Websites, you got to be careful. Are they legitimate websites? Are they fake websites? Emails, as well as door-to-door solicitation. I always tell people, if you didn't invite this person into your home, you didn't call for that. It's probably a situation where you should not let them, not respond to them. These are some of the ways they can reach you. Some of the warning signs, and these are important because most scammers are using this type of information, but we always tell folks if they're pressuring you to make a quick decision, they're not giving you a chance to talk it over. For many of you, when you're going to buy a car, don't you, compare prices, you shop around, you want to make sure you're getting the best buy. Most of us will pick up on a salesman who's putting too much pressure. It's a turnoff. You tend to walk away. The same is true of the scammers. They want to get you and think. They don't want you to think is what it is. They want you to get you to make decisions emotionally. And we're going to talk about that because people associate scammers and falling for the scam with intelligence, and that's not true. We've had interviews with scam artists, and they actually prefer intelligent people. Intelligent people tend to have more money and they have more resources, which is what they're after. The techniques that they use, as we talk today, have more to do with your emotions than it does with whether or not you have capacity to understand. So it's not necessarily a sign of your intelligence, and it's not necessarily a sign of you having capacity issues. They're taking advantage of your vulnerabilities. Never give out any private information. Got to be careful with that, because sometimes a scammer might have part of your Social Security, for instance. Lately, you're usually asked for your last 4 digits. So they might have your last 4 digits. So they might trick you by saying, we just need the first 7 digits. So giving out any type of private information is usually a sign. Wiring and transferring monies. I've had a lot of seniors that are asked to provide, either go to the store, whether it's Walmart or one of these stores that sell gift cards, when they're asking you to the payment in the form of a gift card, that's usually a good indication that you're dealing with a scammer. So we always remind people not to provide any personal information, and make sure that you know who you're giving the information to, that you verify it. So if you get an email and it looks like, Steve was just saying, here we're telling you guys to be careful, and so that's why he mentioned the email that Krista is going to be sending the emails, because now you recognize her name and you can trust that. But if you don't know, we always recommend folks to call and see, is this really the source that it presents? Because scammers are pretty smart. They go online and they cut and paste logos. They can make the email look very official. So you're looking at it at first blush, it looks like it's real, and you've got to pay attention to that. So what are some of the common scams? So the grandparent scam is a very effective scam. And those of you in the audience that, if you're a grandparent, how many of you would do just about anything for your grandchild if they were in trouble? I would imagine most of you. So the grandparent scam is tricky in the sense that they usually call, it's usually at nighttime, because they want to catch you when you're sleeping and you're kind of rattled by the phone ringing. And they pretend to be your grandchild. And the voice, you won't recognize the voice, because they'll say something like they've been in a car accident and they might actually have their nose plugged like I just did, and say, well, you can't hear what I'm saying because I hit my nose to the dash. And basically, don't tell mom, don't tell anyone. Those are all signs that it could be a scam. As soon as they're being sworn to secrecy, but they do that on purpose, because they're trying to get you to make that decision quickly, because they're tugging at your heartstrings. It's not, and that's why most grandparents, it's very effective. They fall for that. The home repair scams is another one that's pretty common with. And I always tell folks, same thing. You want to make sure you get your references, you check it out. But in a home improvement scam, the common one is they'll knock on your door. And they're like, well, I was working on one of your neighbors down the street. They were getting some roof work done, and I have some extra materials. And I was walking, I noticed that your roof needs some work. And that's how so it's totally unsolicited. And they randomly picked your house. And I want you to be careful when you're not the one that's generating that call. Home repair scams are complicated, because if partial work has been done, it sometimes will fall to a civil problem, because there was some agreement, some work was done. We used to use the saying, one nail, no jail, because where it can become a criminal action in this, if you actually exchange and give them a deposit and no work is ever done, that would be viewed very most likely as a crime. So that's an area where I find myself working closely with civil matters, getting representation with an attorney, going after the contract versus a crime occurred unless we need to file a police report. The fake scam, the fake check scam, this is an example of what I was saying. The check looks very real because the scammers have taken the time to download and steal either the bank's logo, or it could be coming from somewhere else. So it looks very real. So the person gets tricked into depositing the scam, only to find out after it's been deposited and it didn't clear, so that so you're out of that particular. It becomes you lose that money. Some other common scams. The reverse mortgages, the same thing. You want to check to make sure that that's legitimate. The fake prize one is the one that I see a lot and most often, where the person gets a phone call or it comes in the mail where they won a prize. And the trick, or how the red flag for it is, they say to you, you won $50,000, but in order for you to receive the money, you're going to have to pay for the taxes up front. So two things about that. First of all, you can't win a sweepstake that you didn't buy a ticket for. So that's the first thing that should be a tip off. The second one is that no time whatsoever should you be paying for anything up front. That's another flag, that when they're asking you for something in advance, that it's the scam. But this is an area where older adults fall for this. And when we talk to them about how didn't you pick up on it, it's like, with this money that they want to get, when you ask them, they want to be able to help. They want to be able to help their family. So in their mind, yes, I'm going to get this money. It's not even about them. They're going to take this money and they're going to use it to help their family members. And that's how that whole emotional tug takes over, and they stop thinking and using their brain, because they're already start thinking about, gee, if I get this money, I can help my family do this, do that, or for themselves, and be able to retire in a way that they hadn't thought of. But I'm just saying, you got to be careful. This is what a scam might look like. Sometimes they misspell things, and so you got to look for that, poor grammar, and those are all little tips that that it might be scam. It's better to not act and bring it to someone's attention. So I think some of the staff at the bank might be a good person for you to check with. At your local, some of you may have a senior center nearby, or the area agency, or you can call us. You can call me, because I can probably help you figure out who can we talk to and show, and make sure this is legitimate before you jump in with both feet. So one of the things I'm concerned about, I mentioned already, with the virus, and the scammers are taking advantage of us because they know we're scared. Most people are very afraid of what's going on right now with the coronavirus. And because of your fears, they're using that against you to try to get you to do things you normally wouldn't do. So some of the popular coronavirus scams that are happening right now are selling kits, medical kits, so you can do your own testing, which of course hasn't been. Our office has actually gone after, the Consumer Protection has actually filed suit after several businesses that were selling fake treatments. The other thing that's happened that we went after, there were folks that were charging money, panic buying. So we've had some successful lawsuits already in Ohio regarding that. So we're seeing folks. You're not seeing it as much right now as much as when it first started, where the price gouging, things have kind of leveled off. The stimulus checks related to the COVID, we're still seeing, and we're concerned because there's talk of another check to come. But there's been a lot of people interested in who's getting that check, where did the check go, did it go to the individual, did it go, and if they're living in a facility, and particularly is where we're seeing a lot of folks claiming that it's theirs. We've seen some situations, the facility kept the money and they shouldn't have kept the money because it actually belongs to the senior. So we've been very effective in making sure that check went to the actual individual. We're concerned because if it happens again, we suspect that we'll have another rash of people trying to take the money. I've also seen charity scams going up because, again, they're taking advantage of the fact of the climate we're in, where there's an inducing panic and fear. So people are most likely, we're going to make decisions that we normally wouldn't have made. This other scam here, it actually is a little bit more getting into elder abuse, but older adults, as they get older, sometimes they need help with their help with their daily living, help with their cooking, driving. And here's an example, and this is actually a case that happened in Columbus. This guy was worth a lot of money. He didn't have any family, so he hired people to take care of him. While they hired, when they got hired, they learned of how much he was worth. They literally they made it look to him like they were families, but it was all about getting him to find out where the money was. But what happened is that the bills that should have been paying, they were, instead of paying bills that should have been paid, they were keeping the money. But they actually ended up getting caught, and which was good because it was brought to the attention of Adult Protective Services, and then Adult Protective Services got the police involved. So they were able to successfully prosecute these people. So I want to see if you guys are paying attention and put another poll question, because we're talking about elder abuse, and some of you might be thinking, well, this would never happen to me. This happens to people, but not me. So the question is, how many Americans do you think 60 and older do you think suffer from elder abuse each year? Do you think this is a common problem? Do you think this is the question is, how many Americans 60 and older do you think suffer from elder abuse each year? Is it 1 in 20, 1 in 5, 1 in 9, or 1 out of 2? Give you a chance to answer that question. So do you think this happens often? Oops. So here we have the results. So you guys are smart and you're paying attention. The research it's not an exact science, because unfortunately we don't have good data, because there's not a uniform system that records elder abuse in Ohio, let alone from state to state. But experts believe that approximately 1 in 9, 1 in 10 adults are actually fall victims. So if we were in a room right now and there was 100 of us, we would have at least 10 people coming forward to tell us that they believe. So it's pretty prevalent, and I'm going to guess that most of the people on the call know someone in their family, whether it was an aunt or uncle, or that you know someone who's fallen victim to some type of elder abuse or elder exploitation. Oops. So in terms of it's common. So I just told you that 1 in 9. But what's important to recognize is that in elder abuse, it tends to be a familiar problem. So elder abuse, the victim typically knows the person who's the abuser. So we say 90% are family members or friends because they know the person. And then in terms of how many times it's reported, we know that this is a terribly unreported problem. And that's why it's important to have this conversation today, because not only do I want you to recognize what's happening, because that's the first line of defense, how can I detect it so I can avoid it? But if it does happen to you or a family member, someone you love, right now, we believe that only 1 in 15 cases are actually reported to authorities. And that's alarming to me, because that means of the cases that were reported last year, there was in the state of Ohio, we had over 30,000 reports of elder abuse in the state of Ohio. If we use that number only 115, we know that there's a ton more of other cases that are not being reported. If it's not reported, then how are we going to stop it? So it's important to recognize it so we can get some help and we can deter it from happening again. The last bullet there is important, because as we're getting older, we believe that about 50% of adults who are over the age 85 have some type of dementia and we also know that if you are someone suffering from dementia, you are more likely to become a victim. So by the way, I'm a social worker by training and not an attorney. When I'm working with adults and they call me and we talk, one of the things that I do ask that question is, has a person, do they have medical care? Have they been diagnosed? Because sometimes people they're having some changes in with their brains, but we don't know because they haven't been detected. But I do know that makes them more vulnerable. Here's a good example, and some of you might recognize Mickey Rooney. because we tend to think of elder abuse, that's not me, it's somebody else. But the reality is, as we all get older, all of us can experience decline in our mental health and physical being. One of the things I've recently learned from one of my colleagues is a physician. He says that as we get older, all of us experience what they call a mild cognitive decline. So as you get older, all your organs, including your brain, will decline with time. And one of the things that's important about financial exploitation is some of us associate financial exploitation with advanced memory loss, advance of dementia, when in reality, we're 4 times more likely to have a math error when we have mild cognitive decline. And that's important because as you get older, you're already going to start making some mistakes with the math, let alone if somebody approaches you and wants to sell you some stock, or the skill sets that's needed to execute a contract like that is complicated. And some of us can fall susceptible because we're already experiencing that type of decline. We don't know it because at this stage, you're still carrying out your social activities, you're still taking care of yourself. So we don't realize that it's actually the risk to financial exploitation is actually in the beginning of our decline of our mental status, not at the end. So Mickey Rooney he was taken advantage by his stepson. And he was out in California, he became his conservator, and he went out and testified to the Senate, the United States Senate, because he says we need better rules, we need better support systems, so we're recognizing this problem. So he did a lot to bring this to the attention. Another famous person was Casey Kasem. Some of you might remember Kasem from listening to his the records, and he always had I think it was Sunday mornings, Casey Kasem. His second wife also used her guardianship to take from his financially, and actually the kids to this day are fighting with the estate and trying to change rules. So most states in Ohio, there's a pending legislation to prevent guardians from isolating family members and preventing them from seeing them. So Casey's another person that's whose efforts are leading to some major changes. So what I've learned about exploitation is that there's other types of abuse, is that they go together, and sometimes it's to control the individual. Sometimes the bad guy uses physical force to threaten. I know a lot of older adults who gave money because they were threatened that if you don't give me this check, I'm going to put you in a nursing home. So sometimes there's a combination of physical as well as emotional threat to the individual. But they go together. And then financial exploitation, it's not just money, as a reminder, it's also the use and misuse of funds and property and assets, and without the person's permission. In the Adult Protective Services law, they actually don't use the term financial exploitation, they say exploitation, because it's also you can exploit a person. So it's a little different. And in Adult Protective Services, the bad guy is supposed to be someone that the person knows. So if you're experiencing scams or fraud, if you call Adult Protective Services, they may not accept the case. This is an area where I get asked a lot of help because they need to know who do we call in this particular scenario. And I have a slide to show you that. But one of the things that I do when people call my office asking for help is I want to find out, first of all, who is the person. If it's an older adult, are they able to take care of themselves? Do they need someone else to take care of them? In Ohio, we need to know the age of the person because Adult Protective Service law is only for 60 years old. So if you're under 60, that APS law may not protect you. And then I also ask questions to make sure where the person lives, because we don't have one particular agency. If the person lives, for instance, in an assisted living or a nursing home, we're not going to call Adult Protective Services in that scenario. We're either going to call the long-term care ombudsman or the health department or the Attorney General's healthcare fraud. So that's one of the reasons why I tell people we're navigators, is because we have to know, we need to ask a lot of questions, because I need to know where the person is, where they live, what type of vulnerabilities. I also need to know who the bad guy is. Are we suspecting family? Are we suspecting a stranger? Or are we expecting the staff from the facility? Because that can all, and I don't just ask those questions because I want to be nosy. I'm asking those questions because I'm trying to figure out what resources would be best to handle that particular scenario. So we do know it can happen anywhere. As I just mentioned, it can happen in your home, your apartment, your condo. So when I say the word home, I'm really talking about in the community, and it could be your home or the home of another person. It can also happen in the facility. So when I use the word facility, it's referring to not just nursing homes, but also assisted livings. And in Ohio, those facilities are all licensed. And as I was explaining, we would use different resources depending upon where the person lives. The one thing I like to, it is everywhere and it's pervasive, because some people think that and associate this problem with only certain zip codes, certain cities, certain areas of the town, and it's just like it happens everywhere, and it's a matter of opening up your eyes. And I know that I've had conversations with folks that they think that this is a problem where it happens in certain areas, but not in their area. I know that I've done some advocacy with the legislation, and I would bring the stats, the statistics with me, because I would show them, look, last year, this is how many reports you had. And then I would do the math for them, because I know it's unreported. So if one particular county, for instance, only had 50 cases, I would say, okay, let's multiply that times 15, because that's going to give you a better idea of an indication of what's actually happening in terms of the prevalence of elder abuse in this particular county. So I'm curious now, we've been talking for a little bit about the problem. So I do have another question for you, another poll question. So who is at risk for financial exploitation? So who's at risk? We talked a little bit about this. I want to see if you're paying attention. Is it older adults who are isolated? Older adults who rely on other people? Older adults who have recently lost a spouse? Is it older adults who have a cognitive impairment? Who's most susceptible? Maybe I'm giving you a trick question. Give this a few more minutes. Who do you think is most susceptible for being a victim of financial exploitation? Is it, you think, someone who's by themselves, someone who relies on other people, someone who's recently lost a spouse, or older adults who have a cognitive impairment? Let's see, we got, wow. So everybody, almost identical answers. Everybody pretty much, because these are all risk factors. So the one that I like to point out that is the highest one, and I think particularly now with what's going on with COVID, isolation is actually the #1 risk factor, and that's important because while you're isolated, we associate cognitive impairments and people who have a decline in their cognition being associated, but that's not #1, because in reality, we're social beings. We need other people. That's one of the reasons why the romance scheme is so effective. The romance scheme is, and some of you may know someone who received an email or has a relationship with someone they've never met, because we all need that special someone. I remember a case that I worked with one of the detectives down in Columbus. The lady, she met her friend on it's an internet game. It's on Facebook. It's called Word with Friends. So the guy struck a relationship with her. She didn't have any issues. She had no physical limitations, and she didn't have any cognitive limitations. But she was lonely. Her husband had passed. She didn't have a a companion. And this guy took advantage of it, that she joined that Words with Friends because she was actually lonely. You got to be careful with some of those internet games, because some of those people that you're talking to are not who they appear to be. They're people who are on there looking for their next victim. So this guy became her best friend and actually offered her, he was courting her. He was offering her marriage, but in the process, he needed money because his car broke down, and then he needed money. You know, he always had a reason. He had to have surgery. When he was going to meet her, they never met because whatever happened, there was always a reason why he never made it in town. But her family was really upset with her, and this is why it's important to talk about it, because the family told her and yelled at her, and some of you may have tried this, told her, this is a scam, don't do this, and yelled at her that she was being, she was being stupid. And it wasn't very effective, because usually when you yell at people and you tell them they're stupid, that usually doesn't work. Then they said, okay, we're going to take her phone away, because this way he can't, the scammer, her boyfriend can't find her. She doesn't have her phone, so they took it away. Believe it or not, the bad guy actually sent her a new phone because he wanted the relationship to continue. So when these situations come up, I always tell folks, we have to find out what made them vulnerable to begin with. And it's usually loneliness as well. Can we replace that instead of yelling at the person and saying, that could have been her only phone call she was getting. We need to find out healthy outlets, whether it be socialization, senior centers, or clubs, or some type of activity to replace the bad behavior, to see if we can put services in place. Sometimes I always recommend that the person get to see the doctor, because once a victim recognizes, once an older adult recognizes that they've been taken advantage of many times, they become depressed and they feel stupid and ashamed and embarrassed. So it's important that we get them connected to their physician to make sure that we address that and they don't go into further depression. But these are some of the risk factors. The bereavement is important too, because I remember having a case. When I spoke to the family, the victim actually realized that he took advantage of me at a time when I was very vulnerable. Anyone on the call has ever experienced a loss, you know how vulnerable you are. She realized after the fact that she found it and realized, these people, I've known them all my life, but this is the time they came to meet me. And so I want people to realize, but isolation, so staying connected, older adults, I highly recommend, because the kids move away, they move out of state. So it's real important that we replace our support system and we get friends that are different age groups, because that's the other thing that sometimes happens. Our friends move away, or they need to move into a care facility, so we lose our support system. That makes us vulnerable when we're alone. So recognizing the signs, older adults and people who have been victimized, seldomly do they come up and tell you because of what I just told you. They're ashamed, they're embarrassed. So one of the things that I do when I talk about the warning signs is because we need to be able to recognize it, because most likely they're not going to come forward. So paying attention to any kind of changes is really important. So changes in appearance, people who are, if they're losing weight, they are disheveled, all of a sudden they look different, that could be a red flag. People, sometimes their personalities changes, because now I'm realizing that I'm being taken advantage of, I'm getting embarrassed, I'm getting angry. So my personality can actually change. Someone who's very pleasant can change. If they're not living alone, a new best friend, I see this often where the family will report to me that someone has moved in and now I don't have access. Or this person, when they're there, it also changes the behavior of my older adult. That's a red flag if there's someone now that's dominating their changes. And of course, the last one, if any changes to the house. So these are warning signs. If we see these things, we want to do a little digging to find out what's going on. They're red flags. Changes in documents, this is a big one. I already mentioned a new best friend. I get very suspicious when someone tells me a new neighbor is now always coming over, and then that new best friend now is not letting family visit, or they're keeping us from visiting. That could be dangerous. New best friends, new power of attorneys is a big one, because usually we execute power of attorneys. We execute those with the reason we execute them when we're younger, because we want to, who who we picked that person for a reason, but new documents, whenever I see a new power of attorney, whose idea was it? Whose attorney was it? Was it I ask a lot of questions. You're probably seeing, now you're figuring that out about me. When the monies are spent, I always try to find out who's benefiting from that. So patterns of expenditures, if things are changing, those are all really big red flags for me. And that's when I want to get involved, get Adult Protective Services involved, the police involved, or an attorney, someone. I start trying to figure out who we can get involved to do something. So in terms of who are the bad guys, how are people hurt? I like to remind everyone about this one, because sometimes people can hurt by accident, but that doesn't mean it's not a problem. I always remind people we should focus on the outcome to the older adult, because unintentional abuse can be just as dangerous as intentional. So I do want to make sure it doesn't matter if they wanted to do it or not. The unintentional problem, those folks typically can get help. Like, I didn't know, and I'm educated, and now I know I do better. Or there's something wrong with the caregiver. Sometimes we rely on the spouse, for instance. If like my in-laws, my father-in-laws, they're both 86 years old. So is it realistically for me to think that my 87, that they can take care of each other? Because maybe they're both failing. So sometimes we assume that everyone's okay and they're not. But anyone can be. The intentional act is really when someone has a plan and they're executing it. They're wanting to gain control over the individual because they're after something, and quite frankly, it's usually the money. So they use different techniques that we were talking about because they're after the money. So I'm curious, and I want to because again, if you're paying attention, we're going to do another polling question. It says, in cases involving elder financial exploitation, who are the most common perpetrators? In cases involving elder financial exploitation, who are the most common perpetrators? Is it a stranger? Is it a family member? Is it a business, or is it a Medicare or Medicaid provider? Who's the biggest culprit? Give you a minute to figure that out. So in cases of financial exploitation, who's the most common perpetrators? And by the way, I used to be a nice person before I got involved in elder abuse and this problem, because now I don't trust too many people right now. And that's a joke that I'm making, but I do know that I was more trusting of human beings before I jumped into this work, and I realized that we actually have folks that seek out older adults and take advantage of them, and they do it intentionally. So I'm going to get ready to close that question. Everyone's had a chance to answer that. In most cases involving financial exploitation. So 100% of you, this is interesting, 100% click family members. So this is a trick question. So the reason it's a trick question is because in elder abuse cases, the bad guy is family members. So those of you are correct. I said 90% of victims know their perpetrator, because in elder abuse, it's usually a familiar interaction between a victim. But financial exploitation is broader than, and it's actually a growing problem. There was a study done in New York that said one out of 43 cases of financial exploitation was called to the attention of an individual. But financial exploitation is broader and includes scams and frauds. And most of the folks that commit fraud and scams are strangers. They're the ones that we talked about, the romance schemes. Some of you might have had another one that's very common. Has anyone ever had a situation where they got an email from the Nigerian prince or long lost relative that they're inheriting money, or one of your family members is traveling and now they're stuck somewhere. That's pretty common. I know it's even happened to me. Sometimes I had my Facebook hacked, and my brother, I had an email that my brother was traveling and was supposedly ran out of money, and I needed to send money. I knew my brother was not traveling, and I knew right away it was a scam, and I called him up and I said, hey, you might want to check your Facebook. I think you've been hacked. And that's what the bad guys do. They'll try to get into your computer to try to steal your information to find other victims. So the financial exploitation is mostly done by strangers. Abuse, it's mostly family. So I'm sorry, I kind of tricked you on that one on purpose to make sure you're listening to me. So the abusers can be anyone. But when we're dealing with elder abuse, it could be, as we mentioned, family members, adults, children, other family members, caregivers. I always say that abusers can be anyone in the right circumstance. I had a case in this particular job. The abuser in that case was actually the investor, her broker. He was going through what I would call a midlife crisis and took up gambling and had lost a lot of money. He became addicted. So he out of necessity, he took advantage of 5 of his elderly clients and convinced them. So he thought he can get away with it because he quit his job. He quit his job, but he convinced those 5 people to stay with him. And it was really him trying to control their assets. But he got caught, thank God. And because he actually took her to the bank, and thank you to a very astute bank teller, because they didn't recognize why he was coming to the bank to withdraw money. They called the local police, and they called APS, Adult Protective Services. And I'm glad the police officer also called my office, because we were able to help coordinate in that particular scenario what part of, so not only they caught him, but they also, in terms of her needing care, because she was going to need some help getting back on her feet. So I'm a big fan of having different systems working together, especially when it comes to older adults, because the police's job is to put the bad guy away and hold him accountable. They're not going to help restore safety by getting wraparound services, medical care, counseling. So that it's a good, in many of these cases, it's a good idea to bring them together. And in that case, we did. And I like tell that story, because I know when the police came to interview her, the police car was in the front. When he saw the police car and he saw them there, he became ridden with guilt and basically confessed to the whole crime. He thought they were there to take him away, but in reality, he ended up confessing. His confession helped get him put away, which was, of course, I like those stories. I like when the bad guy gets caught. So what can you do? Because we've been talking about this, and it's like there's a lot of, it seems like, oh my gosh, this is such a big problem. What can we do? How can we avoid this? So the first thing I want, getting educated, having talks like today is very important, because the first step to solving a problem is recognizing there is a problem. So just admitting that there's elder abuse and this exists is actually a step in the right direction, because we're aware of it. And, so we want to make sure that we're aware of it. How can we get safe? The other thing we talked about, isolation. So staying connected, being engaged is very critical. Just being involved is a way of protecting yourself from being and becoming a victim. So checking on your older adults, if they're isolated and they don't have any social activity, that's something you want to correct as soon as you can. Senior centers, day centers, activity groups, there's different things they can do to get engaged, and that helps stay safe. So taking action, we tend to the sooner we get a plan for ourselves as we get older, the better. So having and thinking about who should be your power of attorney or for your monies and personal care, that's pretty important. Think about it. Seeking independent advice. So that's what we talked about. Before you sign a contract, before you sign that dotted line, check with someone to make sure that's in your best interest. Know the people you're working with is critical. So I highly encourage never to do business with something that you didn't initiate yourself. You didn't initiate that email. You didn't initiate that letter that came in the mail. You didn't initiate that home repair guy that knocked. So you want to make sure you're in the driver's seat and you're doing that, as well as that way it gives you a chance to check and do your screening. So don't just hire the first person that comes to your door. Do background checks. Check with other people. Those are all very important steps in making sure you're safe. So I want to show you a quick video because I think my office is available, but I think this is a nice little, bear with me because I'm not, here we go.
Well, you are going to need a whole new roof. So, the next thing is I'm going to make you out an estimate with no real details on it at all. Then you're going to give me a whole lot of money up front, and then I'm going to skip town without even doing a lick of work. All right? So, go ahead and get out your checkbook. Make the check out to me, because there's nothing suspicious about that.
Unfortunately, it's never this obvious. That's why we're here, dedicated to protecting Ohio families against frauds and scams. File a consumer complaint and get the facts you need at ohioprotects.org.
Did we go back? Oh. So that's a campaign that my office did, and we kind of use humor because people, again, we know that's embarrassing, so we kind of went our way. But that 800 number to ohioprotects.org is important because we have one number for all our sections, and that's important because then that helpline will direct you. But that way, if you like, that ohioprotects.org is a great resource. There's a ton of information that you can share. One of the questions I hear a lot from family members is that the family members don't believe that they've been victimized. I can't get my mom to realize that's a scam. I keep telling her. Sometimes it's helpful to have information from our office to share with your loved ones because they could see it's not them. They could see that this is real. There are people who prey on older adults and pretend to be, whether it's the grandparent scam or the romance scam. It's just sometimes it's helpful because you want to try to teach them that and convince them, because then they can become a willing participant. So I think that's important. And that information is there. You can also file complaints there. If you're not a phone person, you can do it online. We do have a new unit called the Robo Enforcement Unit that basically, have any of you guys ever get calls to the house that they seem automated and you're not sure? They're not just a nuisance. It's actually important to deal with robocalls, and you can call our unit and report that number, because what we're learning is that robocalls is really the gateway to scammers. So they'll buy and purchase computer software to make these calls because they're trying to find victims. So we suggest not to answer the call, because once they know it's a real number, then the calls will just grow from there. But that's a good resource. We also have a resource teaching older adults about how to protect themselves. Cyberspace and cyber controls are very important. Too many older adults are on the web and they're not protecting their browsers. So it's real important to learn how to do that. And we actually have a training specifically to teach older adults about that. So I'm going to, so it talks about the cybersecurity. I know we're running out of time a little bit, so I wanted to see if we have any questions from the audience.
Well, thank you, Sylvia, for a great presentation today. And thanks for all the great information and things to be aware of. We do have a couple of questions, but we may only have time for one or two. One that came in more than once in a couple of different ways, so I'll paraphrase. We think my mother has been, who has slight dementia, is being scammed, but she doesn't think she is. Is it possible for us to file a complaint, or does it have to be her? And then I guess an add-on to that question was what is the first step? Is it to call the Ohio Attorney General? Should we call our local police department first? What is the first step, or is there a progression?
No, I don't. That's a good question, and they're somewhat connected. My screen is up for you guys to have our phone number to the Elder Justice Unit. So I don't know if, because Ohio is local, it's important to involve our police, the police at some point, and sometimes the caller calls us because they want to have help they called us because they called the police and police told them it's a civil matter, and so they get frustrated. Sometimes we help with the jargon, and we help with what information do you need to have when you're going to make a police report. So that's how I end up getting a lot of calls from people like you, is because they tried their local APS and the Adult Protective Services said it was criminal. Then they try to file a police report, and the police report said it was civil, and they're like, now what? So they end up calling us saying, you know what? So we end up figuring out and giving them the information. And sometimes we make a warm referral. So we call the Adult Protective Services together. So we help them with the questions and the answer. The question about the older adult, you can technically call my office if your mom doesn't know. The problem with that is that in America we have civil rights. So which means that your mom we need to either win her over and get her to understand that she's a victim, and that's why the brochures that we have and different things can be helpful. Or I ask you enough questions and we figure out, well, maybe there's some capacity issues and they haven't been addressed that we need to address. So that's why, I might end up giving you some information to try to, maybe we need to get to her doctor, get her evaluated, or maybe we need to call Adult Protective Services. So Adult Protective Services are not necessarily the bad, a lot of folks think if you call APS, it's embarrassing, but Adult Protective Services has the ability to help someone who doesn't necessarily want help. And that's important because they can use resources and go without consent. Otherwise, you've got to really figure out how to get past their consent. I ask that question when people call me, does your mom know you're calling me today? Because I really want to know right away if this is a situation where she knows she needs help and is interested, or if she doesn't know and I'm going to have to figure out how to get around that. So that's a hard question, Steve.
Well, if it was easy, I would have answered it. But thanks for all the great information. Unfortunately, we're past our time already. So I'll remind everybody that the handouts are included on your webinar panel. You can download those, and you can find a lot more information on consumer scams there, financial fraud and exploitation, and more information on what scammers are using to target at Ohioans. However, if you're having problems downloading them and would like a copy of the handouts, feel free to call us here at the bank. You can call Megan at our toll-free number, which is 866-646-7837, or you can just call 866-MINSTER, or you can send an email to privatewealth@minsterbank.com, and we'd be happy to either email you or mail you a copy of the physical handouts. One other reminder is that there's a short survey at the end once we close out. We really appreciate if you would fill that out because it helps us determine what you got out of the seminar and what other kind of topics we could talk about in the future. So Sylvia, unless you have anything else, this is going to conclude our webinar presentation today. And thanks everyone for joining us, and have a safe day.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for having me.
All right, bye-bye everybody.
See what we can achieve together. Minster Bank, serving our community since 1914.